Let me welcome you to Grace Cafe. My name is Mark Ray. I'm Executive Director of Grace Center for Spiritual Development, and I'm just absolutely thrilled to welcome my friend, Pastor Erick Hoskin. He is a teacher. He is founder and pastor of the Word of God Christian Fellowship Church. He's the author of a new book. Let me give the shameless plug here, the new book, The Waiting Season. This is a fabulous little book, and let me welcome you, Pastor Hoskin. Thank you for joining us to just dive into a little bit of what this book is all about. Glad to have you with us.
I'm so excited. Thank you so much for the invitation. It's an honor and a pleasure. I'm humbled to be here. So thank you again. Thank you. Thank all of you.
Well, let me give the shameless plug one more time. This is a book called The Waiting Season. The subtitle is What to Do When God Has You in a Holding Pattern. No doubt there are a whole lot of us out there, the ones who are listening, the ones who have joined us on Grace Cafe, people in your church, people who are associated with the school, people around the world who have experienced a waiting season, a time in which God has said, has almost gone silent on them. This is obviously something that has personal relevance to you. Seems to me, as I've read the book, that there is a background story to this that drove you to actually write the book. Could you share kind of 30,000 feet, share with us a little bit of the background on the book?
Absolutely. You know, the inspiration behind this book was really out of two things. Number one, I was in a season where I even found myself teaching and talking, but I heard so many people just talking about my destination. And so, you know, we get caught up in that, the anticipated joy of making it to this fictitious place. And so the Holy Spirit really arrested me. I had to, 2 years ago, I had to take a trip to San Francisco. And you would not believe the trip. I had to fly out on a Thursday. And so on that Monday, I started packing for a trip on Thursday. Now, mind you, I was only going to do 2 days of ministry. I had to fly back Saturday night because I had to preach at my own church on Sunday morning. And all of the things that transpired from Monday up until Thursday. And when I got to the airport, all of these things that transpired led me and gave me the inspiration behind this book. You know, and so often we're in such a hurry to get to our destination, but along the way, the things that we need to do to make certain that when we get there, we're prepared. And I think because of that, God allowed me to just gave me so many nuggets of for instance, I was only going on a 2-day journey. I was only on a 2-day journey. And if you had seen my suitcase, you would have thought that I was going on a 2-week vacation. I had so many items because I didn't know what to take on the journey. And when I got to the airport, I got up to the counter to check in, and the young lady, she was so nice. She said, "Listen, you got too much weight. You have too much weight in this suitcase. You're going to either have to buy another suitcase, or you're going to have to pay the additional cost." And as me not trusting the process, I ended up having to spend extra money that I should not because I was carrying too much weight to my destination. And so it's just little nuggets like that the Holy Spirit allowed me to look at, to really bring it into the practical world, that there's some weight we got to shed. And sometimes God puts us in a divine holding pattern until we share weight that can't work where we're going. So those are just some nuggets. I don't want to, you know, it's just some nuggets and inspiration of the book.
We don't want to reveal too much because you're going to actually be teaching 3 nights, November 7th, 14th, and 21st here at Grace School of Theology on this book, the truths that have come out of this. Now, yes, I will say this. Almost everybody can say they've experienced a waiting season in an airport. Yeah, is that the truth? But yeah, we're talking about a larger season. Define for us, if you will, how would you define a waiting season?
Absolutely. You know, you have to have the right perspective, particularly from a spiritual construct, because I define it as a divine holding pattern that God places you in, not for punishment, but rather for preparation. And so when you look at it with an improper view, then you think that you're being punished, you think God has forgotten about you, and that's not necessarily the case. Sometimes God will put you in an orchestrated divine holding pattern to prepare you for where you're going, but not only that, to prepare your future for you. So it's a duality in the holding pattern. And so once you embrace that and understand that your waiting season is not your wasted season, that there is actually work to be done on the believer's part in order to be ready for the destination or the destiny rather of where God has. So it's an orchestrated divine holding pattern that I liken to say a hold up that what the waiting season is.
That's a great definition. Divine, meaning there is purpose behind it, that God has put you in this place to teach you something, to deal with you. You talked about it being a waiting season, not a wasting season. How are ways that we waste that time? If we're in a waiting season, how do we waste that?
I think anytime that we don't learn the lessons of the divine season of pause is wasted season. Here's the beauty of it of tests. Our teachers in school didn't give us tests because they hated us. They gave it. No, they didn't. They did. We probably thought they did.
Yeah.
The reason we thought that they hated us or the test was difficult was because we didn't take the time to prepare.
Yes.
They gave us the call. They told us, listen, you're going to have a test on what you've gone through on this particular date. And so now you have the assignment. So now it's our job to study for the test so that when the test comes, we have the right perspective so that we can be promoted to the next level. It's on us if we don't do the due diligence or preparing. Lord knows, even in seminary with some of those difficult courses, the test was coming, but the test was not to punish us, it was to prepare us. And so I think we can waste seasons or prolong them rather, because I still think that they will come to pass. It's just delayed. Doesn't mean denial. If we prepare for the test, then we can understand that our waiting season is not wasted season.
Got it. And let me frame this just a little bit more, because I have seen, and I love that. Are you preparing yourself during this waiting season? There are ways I see us actually physically wasting that time when we worry, when we have anxiety, when we have a wrong focus. Or sometimes and let's be honest, it happens when we just get stuck. We get almost to the point that we can't take a next step. And so in that time period, there's got to be a different view, a different focus to what that waiting season is, rather than the frustration of, God, you're not moving me.
Absolutely.
Well,
Absolutely.
Actually, what you're saying is He is moving you. He is preparing you. So take the time. I love the illustration you've just given. When I take a trip, you pack before you go. Well, that's preparing.
Absolutely.
So should worry be a part of this? Should anxiety? Yeah, go ahead.
Let me jump in because it's amazing. I love that analogy about the trip. But even in the trip, when we don't do the due diligence of really trusting the process, I knew how long I was going to be gone. It was only 2 days. Only 2 days. And I packed literally a full suitcase with maybe 6 outfits, multiple pair of shoes. In fact, I was in such anxiety leading up to the trip because one of the pair of shoes that I was looking for, I couldn't find them. Come to find out, I didn't even wear the shoes. All of that anxiety and worrying about stuff that I would never ever use on the journey. I think we have to bring that back into our spiritual walk and really deal with the anxiety and the worry. Even in Abraham's case, or Abram at the time, when you look at that, Genesis chapter 12, I'm sorry, God gives him the call and tell him, if you do this, I'm going to do all of this. And that was in the first 3 verses, but nowhere in the text do you see him debate, argue, or anything. Verse 4 says, and he departed, and he went. And so I think we have to get over the anxiety and the stress and just go. Now, it does not mean that we're not going to have trials and tribulations, because he has some trials and tribulations.
Sure. You bet.
But you can't stay here, and I think that's one of my favorite chapters in the book, chapter 1. You can't stay here.
Yeah.
You have to depart. It literally means begin the journey.
I had a seminary professor who used to say, when you drive a car at night, the headlights only reveal as far as your next turn.
Oh, wow.
It never reveals your destination, and you have to trust the headlights, the car, to take the turns and to deal with what's there. That's, God doesn't give us every turn and every step to get to the end of the journey. Why? Because we'll fret and worry over that whole thing and never understand him in the moment of the journey. We'll blow that up. Um,
That's good. Absolutely.
you mentioned this. You mentioned Abraham. There was also Hannah. You had a couple of Old Testament examples in this. Um, the interesting thing for me with Abraham is that in Genesis 12, God says, go,
Hmm.
but he never says where.
Right, right.
He just, the first thing he says is, you got to get up and go.
That's
There is
good.
this step of faith to go, to walk in that direction, knowing that at some point in time, he's going to continue to reveal where the ultimate destination is. You've talked
Absolutely.
about Abraham and you've talked about Hannah. Um, uh, how do you deal with biblically? Let me put it in that perspective. How do you deal biblically with being in that waiting season, knowing there's a destination ahead, but you don't know what that destination is?
That's good.
How do you walk through that?
You know, for me, I think God continues to reveal himself to us the more we spend time with him. Not but also the biblical truth that we find in his word. You know, taking Abraham's book. What I love about Abraham is because I liken myself to that story. I really, really found myself in that story because Abram, before he became Abraham, found himself in a season of becoming. So
Yes.
when we find Abraham in Genesis 12, he wasn't what all he was going to be, but what he was going to be was already inside of him.
Yeah.
So God already knew what he was going to become. So he was in a season of becoming. So you got between Genesis 12 and Genesis 17, this long waiting season of him actually becoming the father of many nations. It's already in him. So had he not departed, left, took the journey, walked in faith, even though he had to go through seasons where his integrity would be questioned, telling stories, challenges, and all of that stuff, it's still not it still did not stop what God had for him. It's just that in that waiting season, God had to deal with some things on the inside of him, and the same is with us.
Yeah.
We're in the season we're in before we get to where we're going to become or who we're going to become. Man, God has to do some purging, he has to do some pricking. And here's the reality of it. Sometimes it doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
Oftentimes it doesn't feel good. I try to work out, I try to my best to work out. And one of the things that I found out, in order to see maximum results, I have to, particularly in lifting weights, I have to lift more weight or push more weight than what I normally would in order to gain the muscles that I'm desiring. And the same is in life. In order to produce and get the strength, you got to lift heavy weight. And sometimes lifting a heavy weight is not good. It's not, I mean, it doesn't feel good. And so it may not feel good to us, but it's good for us. And so I think that just because I found myself in that struggle of me on my way to my journey, whatever that is that God has for me. God, I'm willing, I'm ready to go. And the same was with Abram. He had to go through trials and tribulations, he had to go through hurdles, but he became the father of many nations. Oh,
That's,
that blessed me.
that whole realm, and like I said, maybe there's a second book in this. If you look at David, here's
Yes.
David who was anointed
Mm.
king,
And
and
still
then
had to
had this entire waiting period until Saul is taken
right.
out of the picture before he actually can become king. And look at the multitude of things that occurred to him as he ministered to Saul, as he was driven into the woods, as he was pursued by Saul.
Run for his
What was
life.
God developing in him to create the King David that actually took the throne? That waiting period for him, an unbelievable waiting period of multitudes of really difficult times. Uh,
Let me,
yeah,
and I don't want to jump it too theological, but these are some of the truths that'll come out in the class. Even in Hannah's story, once you realize that your life is no longer your life, and it get personal for me now,
yeah,
that my life and my journey belongs to God,
yes,
then I have to wait because I know whatever comes out, it's for God's glory and His purpose. Hannah's story, she just wanted a baby. I want to. Now there were multiple reasons why she wanted a baby. Back in those times, you need a man child to widows, how they were frowned upon and how they were looked upon, and somebody to carry on the name, somebody to take care of it, and all of that stuff. And so she just wanted I need a son. I need a son. She was very specific in that prayer. I need a son.
Yeah.
She did not know the totality of what God was going to do. God knew he was going to bless her with a son, but he had to bless her at the right timing, which is another one of my chapters. Your blessing is on schedule.
Yeah.
Because when the son that she was given turned out to be the first prophet of Israel, and we know the magnitude of his responsibility. And so when you after you get to on the other side, you got to look back and realize, wow, I was just a small part of a major puzzle or piece of God's puzzle, God's plan. But here's some refreshing news that I want to convey to the students and whoever reads it. When you look in 1 Samuel chapter 1, it talks about how he had two wives, and the other wife had sons and daughters, and they would go up, and when they would go up to worship, the husband would feed the sons and the daughters and the other wife. But the Bible says, and to Hannah he gave double portion. So here's some refreshing news in the waiting season. Here's how you know God's hand is on you, because even though you're in a season of wait and struggle, God still protects you and covers you and provides for you. The Bible says he gave Hannah double portion. So even though I don't have it yet, God still is taking care of me. So just watch the hand of God on you as you are matriculating to where God eventually has for you.
That's it. It reminds me of the visual that if you take a city, God is standing on the tallest building and he can see the destination. You're in the car and you're driving the roads and another driving illustration. You're driving the roads. You can't see the right hand turn, the left hand turn. He can see the destination and he can see where you are on the destination and guide you down the right roads to get to that destination. He's got the kingdom view of it. That's yeah.
I think you're taking my illustrations for the class.
They're all yours. Take them. You got really good ones in the book, though. Really good ones. So let me kind of conclude this. Let me land this plane a little bit with this statement. When I'm in a waiting season, what should my priorities be? Because I can get my priorities completely out of whack. My priorities could be, I got to get through this so I can get onto the journey. I got to get through this so I can get to the destination. But there's in that waiting season, if that is a season that God has ordained, there ought to be something that shifts in my priority when I'm in the waiting season. What should my priorities be in that waiting season?
I think I'm going to give you a few things that your priorities should be, but the ultimate is that your faith in him should increase and heighten.
Yeah.
In that illustration, when I was coming back from San Francisco, it was a late night, and
Yes.
I wanted to get home because I had to get up and preach the next morning. But I noticed that the pilot couldn't land the plane, and the plane was, it was doing a turn. I was like, I really don't like those who I pastor. They know me. They know I hate flying, but I fly often. I hate flying. So any flight that lands, I say it's a good flight. And so I'm wondering why is the plane, because he just said that we should be landing shortly, and it keeps circling, and finally the pilot gets on the overhead and says there are some unforeseen issues on the runway. So we're circling. We were in a holding pattern around the airport, and he said once we get the call that the coast is clear, then we'll land safe. Here's what I think we got to take away from this. It's not just me that needs safely. The reason we have to make it to wherever we have to make is because of not only us, but everything that's connected to us that we're responsible for. That pilot was responsible for more than just me and everything connected to me, but the hundreds of other passengers who are on it. So the reason we have to learn the lessons in the waiting season before we arrive to our destiny is because of what all we are responsible for. And so in the midst of that, we have to increase our faith. We have to trust God and not doubt. We got to learn what James says, which you only learn through trials and tribulations. Count it joy when you find yourself in various trials, multiple, diverse temptation. And so, I just believe that God uses, again, divine orchestrated seasons of waiting to perfect those things that are in us so that we can have the endurance, so that we can have the patience, so that we can learn how to count it all joy. So again, his waiting season is not wasted season. It's not punishment, but preparation. So that the next time when I go on, seriously, when I go on my trips now, I look ahead to see what the weather is like, how many events, and I plan accordingly. That way, I don't have to have anybody helping me carry multiple bags, getting people involved in stuff that they should not, because I carry too much weight. I don't have to pay additional money because I know I've only taken what was needed. Why? Because I've learned in the preparation season for the destiny.
Well, and so ultimately, what you're saying is my perspective in a waiting season is to realize God's in it with me.
You got it.
He's wanting to do a work in me, even in a time period in which I feel like I'm doing nothing. He's still at work.
He's still at work.
There you go. Yeah, got it. Well, friends, the book is The Waiting Season.
Yes.
Author is Pastor Erick Hoskin. There it is again. Love it. And he is going to be our guest teacher on the nights of November 7th, November 14th, November 21st from 6:30 to 8:30 at Grace School of Theology on our campus. Now, let me just tell you, you need to register for this because the seating is limited on campus, but you can register on campus to be there live. You can also register to be online with us live. You can also register to receive a link that will give you a free recording of the event that you can watch at another time. So go to gsot.edu/center. You can register there. It's again November 7th, 14th, and 21st, 6:30 to 8:30. And by the way, it's filling up very, very quickly, which we're just thrilled to see. Pastor Hoskin, I thank you so much for being my guest this morning. I really look forward to seeing you on the 7th, 14th, and 21st. And bless your ministry. And thanks for bringing this biblical truth about the waiting season. We appreciate you being with us.
Thank you so much. Be blessed.
And for you on Grace Cafe, we thank you for joining us here. We look forward to seeing you the next time when we bring you more exciting guests and more exciting stuff. Thanks for joining us here on the Grace Cafe.